Welcome back to the Into My Chill Void podcast, a podcast that is late again. And with that, I do have an announcement. After this episode, I'm going to be taking a break, probably a 1 to 2 month break, just so I can get my ducks in a row. I've gotten busy and there's just other things, and I just want to get myself back on track so I can get these podcast episodes potentially on time again. Of course, I always said that this was a hobby for me, so it was always a potential to become a backseat project. So I figured it would be good to take like a 1 or 2 month break just to sort things out. So it is just a break. We're not quitting or anything. But I figured before I go on break, I would give one more episode, especially considering last episode with recording with my PS5 controller's microphone on accident. I'd like to go out on a better note than that. But with that all being said, let's just get into this episode. And I do want to ask, as I usually do, how people are doing. Hope people are doing great. This is a very hot summer. My room, as per usual, is super duper hot. For a bit there, it just kept being in the 90s, just scorching my ass. And even now, it's like mid-80s. I'm just like, please, give me mid-70s. That's what I'm wishing for at this point, just to chill things down. Although, we have been getting a couple of thunderstorms, so it's like been hot during the day, and it's getting down to like 70s and 60s at night, so that's been happening, but that doesn't really help me during the day. But there's really not too much new with me, for the most part. Still trying to lose weight, work out, get more walks in, eat better, that sort of stuff, working on my audio editing business. I hope everyone is doing well or as well as they can, and maybe we can brighten your day up with this episode going down memory lane, which I guess is a good jumping off point to get into today's topic. So we are on to the segment, What Am I Rambling About Today? And in today's episode, we're not going to be doing a random number to see what the topic will be. I already have one that I want to talk about, so we will just do that. And also, I don't know if I'll have a chill fact of the day, because the topic I'm talking about, it's kind of like this whole episode is one big chill fact of the day, but I still might have one to where I'm trying to be a little more accurate, because I did a bunch of research and just looking stuff up for me being curious about times and stuff, and I'm sure I'm going to be wrong on like a year or two from them, because there were so many and just trying to remember it. But today's topic that I'm talking about is technology I grew up with, and like some other technology even before my time, because I just went down a rabbit hole for a little bit. For those who do not know, I am 30. I turned 30 in May, and I was born in 1995. So really happy to have been born when I was, because I got to experience some of the older technology as technology was rapidly advancing. I have to just say, doing the research that I just did, from like 1950 to like where we are now, like just in 70 years, the rapid advancement of technology is insane. But I am probably going to be all over the place, so that's just a warning. But I guess we'll just start at, me growing up and the different technologies I had and used. Being born in 1995, it was a couple years until I was aware of things, maybe like 4 or 5 years old, so leading into like 1980 or 1998, 1999. My memory will probably be not quite accurate when I had some of these things, but just at least the things I still had in my life growing up. The times may not be exactly accurate though, but of course, some of the first things I remember are, of course, TVs and game consoles. Just all those different things. Although we were not like made of money, so I always had like the previous console version. So like when I had the PS1, the PS2 was out. When I had the PS2, the PS3 was out, which each one was a jump into itself. I honestly never had a flat screen TV until I was 18 and I bought it myself. I remember the last like big bulky TV I had was a 28-inch fat TV, and if it fell on me, I would die. That's also making me think of the, what are they? The RCA cables, the red, white, yellow cables that were like the video and audio for different consoles that were like older. Now, of course, we have just the HDMI, but back then you had to have those different cables. But I don't know, probably the first console that I ever had to have been a Game Boy or a Super Nintendo, maybe one of those potentially, because I don't really remember otherwise, or maybe a Nintendo 64. One of those were probably the first console I ever had. But I just going back a little bit even further, I did, this wasn't the first one I ever played, but my grandmother had an Atari, and I think some in the 2000s is when I found it in her room and I ended up playing it, and it had Pong, and I think the control pad had 2 buttons and like the stick, and I think that was it. I don't know what version of the Atari it was, but so I have played an Atari, so I've gotten that sort of experience. It was definitely interesting to say the least. So just having the experiences of like older technology. Now, there is a limit. I've never dealt with like a record player or records or anything like that, so that was something no one I knew had. But of course, on to like other technology stuff, like VCRs, VHS tapes, cassette tapes, CD players, different stuff like that. I guess we'll just kind of go in order. So I don't know the times that I've had it, but definitely growing up, even like in the 90s and in the 2000s, we had, cassette tapes and also VHS tapes. I learned a lot researching some of this. So the first VCR was invented in I think like 1958 or 1956, one of those two. Like I said, I'd probably be off a couple years because I just researched so much stuff, but I did not know it was made that early. And the VHS tape was not made and invented until like 1971 in Japan, interestingly. But so now I was like, okay, so there must, if the VCR was made in like 1958, then there had to have been another kind of format. So there also was some other like videotape formats besides VHS later on. And so I think that was made in 1951 or somewhere around there, at least in the 1950s, so that could be used with the VCR, which stands for video cassette recorder. Now, what's wild about this, and again, all my information could be wrong because it's the internet, right? But from what I was reading and like researching, the first cassette tape was made in 1962, which I thought was very strange. I mean, there's probably other formats, maybe even before then, for music, because it doesn't make any sense how there was videotape recordings before like music tape recordings. And of course, I know, doing research, I think in the 1928, 1920s was when the record was made, I believe. So, they had like records and stuff to record music then, around that time period, but then you just skip forward. And like I said, there's probably some others. There's probably some other type of tape or something that they use, because there's no way that there was videotape recording before music tape recording. Like that just, or audio tape recording. That just doesn't make sense to me. So in like the comments on YouTube or on Spotify, let me know. Or maybe I'll even do more research after this podcast episode. Who knows? But it's very interesting. But we can like fast forward a little bit to a couple more music options. So I researched, I think it was 1982 was when the first CD was made, and like CD players and all that. And then like in 1995 DVDs were made, and I think 1978 or 9 was when Laserdisc was like created. And Laserdisc is like the previous version of the DVD for like playing like video disc playback and stuff like that. So like they really accelerated things, as you can kind of see and like notice when I give some of these dates, like past the 1950s. It just accelerated, you know, VCRs, tapes, music and audio cassette tapes, then CDs, CD players, DVDs, Laserdisc. They're really, I mean, honestly, like if it was in 1979, from the Laserdisc to the DVD, it was not that long. And then I also researched the first MP3 player, which I didn't know it was that old. From my research, the first MP3 player was made in 1997. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? I figured that was made in like the 2000s, but a lot of things were made in the like mid to late 90s. Like, it's insane how rapidly the technology just evolved from different iterations to just like digital, basically, with like the MP3 player in a span of just like what? From the record player in like the 1920s. So like 70 years there was just a huge thing. And then, like I said, from the 1950s to like now, those 70 years were even more insane to what we have now. All the digital stuff, the supercomputers, the smartphones, everything. I mean, that just leads me into phones in general, just growing up with, you know, so I didn't have like the, the rotary phone where you had to like turn it and stuff. But I did have like a regular phone that was on a cord and landline and stuff, and you had to dial the number, no caller ID if someone called, and you had to do all that. Phones, like payphones. I don't even know if payphones are still a thing anymore. They're all gone, right? Let me know if those still exist, but that was a thing. Payphones. The fun thing, if you had two different phones in the house, while you're on one, someone could get on the other one and listen in on your conversation and talk. That was great. Of course, when your phone was connected to the dial-up internet where it took forever, you're just waiting for a web page to load. Someone calls and answers the phone and ruins your life, because then that shuts off the internet. That was not great times. Internet is insanely fast. In just like the last 20 years, with how much it's accelerated, you can have these massive video files just instantly sent to you. It's insane. And as far as like cell phones, I didn't have one of those until I was 12 or 13, I think. So that would have been almost 2009. So I was a little later on cell phones, but back then we didn't, it wasn't believed that everyone had a phone or needed a phone like it is today. Like, everyone has a phone that's like a supercomputer basically in their pocket. But back then that was not the norm, and honestly I had to really ask and beg to get a cell phone, and it was a flip phone. So like nothing crazy, you just made your calls, and then you had a certain amount of minutes in text. So that's actually where the lingo kind of came from, especially when people had like, per character, they had character limits, right? So it's like, for me at least, I had 1,000 texts. So I had 1,000 texts, and I think 300 minutes for the month. And so I at least wasn't constrained to at character by character. But even before then, some people, they only had a certain amount of characters they can use. So that is why you kind of saw the IDK and words really shorten, so people could maximize their character usage. And it has, of course, stuck around to this very day. Like I said, I was always behind on the technology I had. A lot of my friends ended up having like the bigger and better things. I remember my friend having a cell phone that he could do a lot more on, and it even had a slide out keyboard, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. While I just had my cheap flip phone, which even then, the flip phone probably was a luxury item because other people had, like, you know, less fancy things of that. So it's just interesting, the different time periods and what there was. I think probably like the biggest invention that is like the most mystical and like magic is the internet. And like computers in general, but at least there's some ways to describe what computers do. But the internet just doesn't make sense. I haven't really looked up the definition of it before, but whatever it says, it's just like, no, it's magic. Like, it just doesn't make any sense how this works. And nope, there's no explanation that makes sense. It's magic. The internet being able to have all these web pages and everything in digital form loaded onto them at like high speeds and stuff, it just is insane. It's crazy. And it just never made sense. Of course, I talked about just growing up with it. I don't think we got a computer until like 2006. And, you know, we eventually learned how to do a bunch of things, and upgrading, getting BearShare. That was something my dad used way back to illegally get music. And then there's LimeWire and those different ways you would steal music back then. That was an interesting time. But yeah, I remember in like, I think 2006, 2007, trying to load up a music video that was like, I don't know, it was like maybe like 4 minutes, and it took like an hour. It took an hour to load this 4-minute music video up. And then once it was done, if you wanted to go to another song or video, you were waiting like 30 minutes to an hour. It's insane. But now you can just have a full featured film just play instantly, and just no buffering, no nothing. It's wild. It does make me wonder, someone who was born in like the mid 1920s, who's like alive now, who's lived 100 years, the jump from technology from when they were alive in the 1920s to now is insane. That it has to be the biggest technological leap in human history. And it's really, I'm not sure how things just evolved so rapidly. It really makes you wonder, how did they figure this stuff out? How did they come up with it? Was it just some people who were somewhat smart and just decided to try stuff or had an idea? It just really makes me wonder how this all happened. It's kind of like why one of my new favorite anime of all time is Dr. Stone. Just learning about older technology and them rebuilding it from scratch. It's like, it's really surprising no one ever came out with an anime like that until, you know, recently. But it's just amazing and I love it. It just makes me wonder, like, how did they figure all this stuff out? It's really amazing. And then also, how did they figure it out to rapidly advance things so quickly to where we are now, to where it's like, oh man, soon in a couple years, there's going to be a voyage to Mars and stuff. It's just like, wow. It just makes me wonder, have we reached a peak in like growth? How much more can the technology evolve? Because, you know, with smartphones and stuff, it's kind of reached this limit. Like, you get these small little power upgrades, but it's like, there's not really much more they can do. Same thing with consoles. They don't get much more powerful, or super PC gaming consoles. There's only so much visuals you can get. So I feel like, in a weird way, we're kind of like peaking out of what technology can do, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I guess we will see in the next like 10 or 20 years how things evolve even further, since they've already evolved very quickly. But I guess that's kind of a point. Since it evolved so quickly, there has to be kind of a slowing down period, right? But I have a lot of fond memories of all this old technology and just how it worked, and how, I don't know, is it just nostalgia? Because I know, like, back then it wasn't the greatest, like the internet and VHS tapes, they could mess up a lot, or if you rented them and someone didn't rewind it, you had to sit there and rewind it. all these caveats: CD players, if your disc got scratched up a little bit, or the ride wasn't smooth, it couldn't skip, and all these little imperfections. Cell phones, just like regular phones, where you would, just be on the cord talking for hours. All, like, games, in fact, being now mostly not physical. Most games now are just all digital. But of course, back then you had cartridges. If they didn't work, you blow in them. You blow in the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo 64. Use a Q-tip. Probably things that weren't very good for the cartridges. And then, like, discs. If, like, a CD, DVD, or game didn't really, like, work, or it had scratches, the different methods you try to fix it. I remember this one where it's like, oh, put your disc in the toilet and flush it. Not that you were flushing it down the toilet, but just flushing it in the toilet. For some reason, that sometimes worked. I don't know why, but it was weird. Sometimes that did work, and I have no idea. There were some really bad scratched up used discs that I had bought, and one trick that was real interesting that did work, and I don't know why this one worked either, was toothpaste. You would get some toothpaste on your finger, and you would rub it into the scratch disc. You'd rub it all around the back of the disc, and then you would wash it off with water, and for some reason, that would make discs work again. It's just interesting, the weird stuff we would try that just ended up working. But it's just these fun memories that I have, that everything now is just, there's a lot of software issues with things now, but otherwise everything's just perfect. Everything's perfect, everything does everything for you. It's this weird time, and I know I'm sounding like a grandpa here, even though I'm like only 30, but I've often been described that I have the spirit of a 50-year-old man. But it's crazy, like, you have voice commanded stuff, you just have so much automated stuff, and it's like, I kind of miss the simpler times sometimes. Like, it's fine to change a disc out, you don't have to be that lazy. Like, it's fine to go out and get your own food or something, through the drive-thru. You don't have to, like, use DoorDash and an app to get it delivered to you. So I guess, like, through my ramblings, it's like technology has done a lot of good, but I feel like it's also made people lazy, including me. I'm not throwing shade at everyone and not myself. It's just like with the times, right? It's like, let's get a little less automated with things again, I think. I think it would be good. Let's keep having physical media because, there are some downsides lately where they can just, you're just licensing it, and they can just take it away. I don't like that at all, but that's kind of the world we live in, I guess, with the digital stuff. I have so many memories, because I've had so many different consoles, and we had a place called Family Video, and they had DVDs and games, and I ended up finding a lot of stuff, like a lot of different, TV shows and movies and stuff through that, but also so many games, because we couldn't really afford to buy games, right? So you just rented them. I rented so many games, and I would have never had that experience. Just the excitement going to the video game store and renting out a Nintendo 64 game or a PS1 game or anything like that. It was a joy, and there's nothing like that now. Honestly, everything's bought offline, right, by Amazon. Hardly anyone goes shopping for things anymore. It's really kind of like we're losing humanity, I guess, in a way. Everyone just stays home. There's no more activity, I suppose. I don't know. It's just very strange to think about. And it makes me sad to think about no one will have these experiences that are like younger growing up that I had, that I love so much. But it's just a different era, I guess, and maybe things will be okay. Maybe I'm just an old man yelling at, the void. Let me know if I am crazy and just a weird old man at this point. What are your thoughts on technology, the technology you grew up with, and all that good stuff? Like I said, this has kind of been all over the place. I wish it was a little more more constructed better, but that's just how it is and how this was going to go, which I knew. So, but I think I'll end it there. Otherwise, I'll just be rambling forever on nothing, I guess. I don't know. And I'm sure later I'm going to remember a whole bunch of stuff that I would have liked to talk about, because this always happens. I'll have a topic and then I'll talk about the stuff, and then like later on after I've done put out the episode, it's like, oh man, I could have talked about this, this, and this. It's just the nature of it, I suppose. But yeah, that's been it for this specific topic of just technology, I guess, in general. And still, it's just so amazing in the last 70 years how things have advanced. So cool. It is really cool and fascinating. I don't know if anybody else gets fascinated by this stuff, but it really does for me. So, but yeah, let me know any comments and concerns and everything in between in YouTube or Spotify. But yep, that has been it for this segment and what I am rambling about today. It's time for the chill fact of the day. Keeping in the spirit of today's theme, the chill fact of the day is about the first car. The first car was invented in 1886 by someone named Carl Benz. The car was named the Benz Patent Motor Wagon. It had a max speed of 10 miles per hour. It was the first gas-powered internal combustion engine car invented in the world. In just 16 years, the miles per hour went up to 49 in such a short time. And that's been it for the chill fact of the day. It's time for Tidbits with Dylan. Do not microwave beef hot dogs on just a single paper towel. It will bleed through and you will have a greasy mess. Not sure what idiot did that, but don't be that idiot. Never, ever, ever, ever update your PC software. If you do, something will break. It will always break, and then it will take hours to troubleshoot why it broke. And then at the end of your adventure, you will find that it was a Windows update that you never wanted, you never asked for, and no, you can't turn it off, and then you contemplate burning down Microsoft HQ. So never do it. Public service announcement. Don't leave your grocery cart in the middle of the parking lot or in a parking space. Take the few extra seconds to go put it up. If you do, you are an asshole, you are lazy, and karma will come for you. And here we are, back at the end of this episode. I know I was really rambly with today's topic, but hey, that's kind of what you could have expected with me at this point. Love it or hate it, it exists. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and like I said at the beginning, taking about a month to 2 month break just to get things in order so I can stop being late on these episodes. Also, so maybe I can put more energy into them when I come back as well. But like I said, hopefully you guys enjoyed it in the walk down technological memory lane. Doing this episode has really made me feel old and making me still struggle with having turned 30, so that's an existential crisis that I'm gonna be dealing with. But like I said, this is it for a bit. Hope you are doing well and enjoyed this episode. But that has been it for me. Thank you for listening so much. I will catch you in the next one.